It's Thursday, May 3rd, 2012. I'm Alex Jones, and this is Infowars Nightly News.
Tonight, the battle lines have been drawn. Breaking news from Infowars.com. As leaked U.S. Army documents outline the plan for re-education camps in America. Shocking plans discovered to put political activists in prison camps and then to be pacified by PSYOP officers. It's decision time for the U.S. military. Whom will you serve? Then, the FBI's latest plot to engineer their own job security, as 5 crackheads in Cleveland are arrested after being recruited and trained to blow up bridges. Plus, shocking video of police drugging Occupy protesters, corrupt officers and county deputies caught in the act. Alex Jones talks to Dan Feidt, the producer of the video that documents Minnesota police picking up young people off the street for training programs. Multiple participants say officers gave them illicit drugs and gave them incentives to take the drugs and encouraged them to be informants. Infowars Nightly News investigates. Plus, an update on Ron Paul's campaign surge as he moves into position to seize control of the GOP. All that and more on the Infowars Nightly News. And now your host, Alex Jones.
Tonight's top story confirms everything that we've been documenting for years. It's been leaked, and since then we've confirmed it's even on an official Army.gov website. U.S. Army document outlines plan for re-education camps in America. Political activists would be pacified to sympathize with the government or learn their Stockholm syndrome, because the government itself is run by foreign banks. It goes on to say they would identify malcontents, trained agitators, or people that don't like being gang raped by the government, and political leaders within the facility who may try to organize resistance or create disturbances in the United States. They develop and execute indoctrination programs to reduce or remove antagonistic attitudes. Don't like the fact your kids were shipped over to Saudi Arabia? While you're in a FEMA camp, they'll teach you. And identifies political activists. Don't have that in America. Hell, ask George Washington. That's illegal. Provides loudspeaker support. I've been to urban warfare drills where they train to target the American people, such as administrative announcements. America is a pig house that worships your loving bankers. Right out of Red Dawn. When necessary, helps the military police commander control detainee and the evil American populations. Plans and executes a PSYOP, or psychological warfare, that's what our military is for, is to wage war against us, that produces an understanding and appreciation of U.S. policies and actions. It goes on. This story has gone mega viral, as it should. FEMA camps confirmed, in triplicate, and that they're re-education camps. What's wrong with those? They have them in North Korea. Got a little news flash for the globalist. You may have drugged and dumbed down and brainwashed most of the American people, but a large cohort of us are awake. And if you think you're going to take this country like it's Soviet Russia or Nazi Germany or Chi-Com China, you got another thing coming. There's enough of us left who understand what's happening that you're not going to get away with this. And by the way, this stuff's blowing up in your face. You think we're scared by all this? You may have even leaked this on purpose. It doesn't scare us. It only lets us understand we're on the right side of history. Continuing with this PSYOP, and no, this story is not a joke, it's in the Minnesota papers. Nationwide, a globalist organization is funding police to go pick up youth and others and give them cocaine, heroin, PCP, LSD, marijuana, all of it. They claim it's training officers to tell when you're using drugs. The truth is they're dumping off the homeless, drug addicts, mentally ill at any type of demonstration to have news cameras rolling to demonize people. They also get young people on drugs so they can then be informants to set up other innocents in exchange for the narcotics. So the drug-dealing government from the days of Serpico is getting even more sophisticated. And we've got a guest, Dan Feidt from Minnesota, coming up to break all of that down this evening. Speaking of provocateur actions, the FBI has been in the New York Times, you name it, caught busting groups they create. They don't just infiltrate, they go out and create them. And you know who they find in every case, whether it's Muslims or anarchists? Mentally retarded people on welfare. Schizophrenics, crackheads. I mean, I could go out and hire an Austin crackhead or schizophrenic in an hour with $10,000 to say they're going to, you know, blow up the Capitol. I would never do that, but the point is, this is so incredible. FBI nabs 5 mastermind geniuses after teaching them how to blow up a bridge in Cleveland. And it's all part of just hyping non-existent threats. Like you're told, give your rights up, Al-Qaeda is going to attack you. But Al-Qaeda is our friend now, and we need to give up all our rights because they're going to attack us. But they are attacking Libya and Syria and other countries. Shifting gears out of the latest FBI provocateur staged event with the mentally unfit, we move right along to USA Today. So much money's being spent, billions every month, literally, to launch satellites to spy on farmers and your backyard and you and your family, government using your tax money against you, that report warns of weather satellites' rapid decline. Predicting the weather is tricky enough. Now a new government-sponsored report warns that the USA's ability to track tornadoes, forecast hurricanes, and study climate change is about to diminish. All the money's going into surveilling the people. That's just more begging for money so they can shove a camera down our throat while shipping narcotics into our country. Our government doesn't exist. It's Goldman Sachs, JP Morgan Chase run. Look at this little article. Murder, suicide, or assassination. Did veteran J.T. Reddy pay the price for going constitutional? And that is an article by Patrick Henningsen, a volunteer U.S. border guard and outspoken former U.S. Marine. J.T. Reddy was found dead Wednesday afternoon along with 3 adults and 1 small child in an apartment mass shooting, an apparent mass shooting in Gilbert, Arizona. This is one of the favorite ways the different mafia groups do it. We saw a state senator in Georgia exposing child kidnapping rings, and they went and killed her and her husband, said a murder-suicide. I find this very suspicious. I'd watch this guy. He didn't come off totally like a Fed, like Hal Turner, as most white supremacists, but he did come off as unstable, so he might have done it. It's just that when you know that these things have been staged in the past with all this other propaganda going on, it's very, very suspicious. Speculation of a cover-up frenzy was fueled by an early statement by Sergeant Bill Balfoss stating, "We do not believe the suspect is at large. All the information is pointing to the fact that he is one of the dead at the house," thus continuing the latest trend of not waiting for a full coroner's report before publicly slandering and implicating someone. And that happened with Breitbart. Hour and a half, 2 hours after he's dead. Hey, nothing to look at. He died an hour, few hours before releasing documents on Obama. And then the coroner, of course, died of poisoning, but that's no big deal. Continuing here, moving along from this individual, Oklahoma City bombing grand juror Hoppy Heidelberg passes. An amazing whistleblower, threatened by the FBI with death if he didn't stop exposing the bombs in the building. Hoppy tirelessly worked to expose the truth of what was happening. 1940 to 2012, I think the last interview he did, in fact, he said was on this show with me. Well, we should re-air that in the next few weeks. And he said, yeah, I've got to go fight this thing I have. I don't want to call it cancer and give it power. But Hoppy Heidelberg has gone on to be with the good Lord. So good job, Hoppy, for exposing those globalist terrorists staged Oklahoma City. And we'll be seeing you someday, my friend, along with all of your ancestors and those to come. Let's shift gears now. Officials frantic over Ron Paul supporters seizing control over GOP. Hey, Ron Paul has seized most of the delegates. And in many states, they now admit, like Iowa and, of course, Maine, he really did win. Up front, he was winning, so they just said he lost to create the illusion he didn't have momentum. He gets crowds of 10, 12,000 all over the country. Mitt Romney can't even get a couple hundred, even if he pays them, just like Newt Gingrich. Officials frantic over Ron Paul supporters seizing control of GOP. Congressman fills another 4,000-seat stadium in California. So Ron Paul is going on setting brush fires in the minds of liberty, educating people about an alternative to right-wing fascism and left-wing communism and socialism, all run by Der Rothschild. And continuing with an apple that didn't fall too far from the tree, Rand Paul launches campaign to end the TSA. Our story went viral today thanks to DrudgeReport.com. He is in legislative action to abolish government involvement in security and to replace it with the airports making the decision about their own security they want to hire. And again, that will break up this big lobby that's monolithic and can be commanded by the federal government. So a step in the right direction in a big, fat way. But we're not done with the Ron Paul, Rand Paul revolution of liberty. There's more. We've already aired this week the full speech of Ron Paul talking about false flag terror. Here is some of the man on the street from that rally. We now have the official number, 6,000 plus people. And then we'll come back with the quote of the day before our guest. It's part of the jam-packed information overload that is teleprompter-free Infowars Nightly News. 15-day free subscription at prisonplanet.tv.
Richard Reeves here reporting for Infowars.com. It is April 26th of 2012. We are on the grounds of the LBJ Presidential Library at the lawn on the west side of the venue. We're about to have Ron Paul speak here at 7 p.m. We already have a large crowd. We've got about 30 minutes before the event. There are probably at least over 1,000 people here ready to see Ron Paul. They've really come prepared with their signs, their shirts, their buttons, and it looks like it will be an awesome speaking engagement here in Austin, Texas coming up.
I see a lot of people I saw last time around. I see a lot of new people, and I'm encouraged by that. I'm not going to, sit here and pretend like the establishment doesn't have a few things up their sleeve when it comes to, rigging the election, I'll allege. But it's still optimistic. It still feels good to try and to do the right thing, even if you know that everything's stacked against you.
What we have to think about is restoration of personal responsibility and personal decision making, and that's what freedom is all about.
It's really sad that we've got the answer right here, but we just can't have it because we can't let Ron Paul be president because he's crazy. But as soon as the election's over, we'll have him on Fox and CNN every 20 minutes on every financial show to explain to us why we're in this pickle that we're in. But every time there's an election cycle around, he's crazy again. So that's one of the many things that I think about at least how Ron Paul's been treated in the past 8 years.
Our government and our Congresses are so willing to give up our liberties for our security. I have a personal belief that you never have to give up liberty for security. You can still provide security without sacrificing our Bill of Rights.
Despite the fact that a lot of people say the race for the nomination for the Republican Party is over, do you believe that? What do you think about that?
I don't believe it for a second. If you look at the delegate count, and they haven't even counted California or Texas yet, it looked like Texas was going to go to Santorum, and now he's out. So Texas will most likely go to Ron Paul, and California is 80%, with their Republican Party, 80% for Ron Paul.
And so he's only 2 states away from getting the minimum 5 states to be part of the nomination at the very beginning. Do you think he'll get the 5 states?
I do, and I think for those in the know, we see that he's going to take it. We are at a critical point right now. If we don't vote for him, we are in trouble. It's Goldman Sachs or Goldman Sachs.
Well, it's really encouraging to see all these people out here today. I'm hoping that we're going to hit like 8,000 or something. That's maybe a little unrealistic, but that's just to compete with UCLA. The next step is the media is finally responding to us. This year we had Freedom Watch on TV, and obviously it was just because they were making money off of it, because it definitely didn't push their agenda. And, I just saw Ron Paul for an hour on CNBC knocking down Keynesian economists all day long. So hopefully we'll see more of that. They're going to see these numbers and they just see dollar signs, and even if they don't agree with us, that at least works.
Washington is always the last ones to wake up. Where I go, we get the large crowds, and they're very concerned, of course, about the attack on personal liberties. If you mention just the National Defense Authorization Act, most people know exactly what I'm talking about.
There's no doubt that Ron Paul's backup plan, if he doesn't take the presidency, is to continue his recruiting of all of the young people over to his message. It's selling, and he says liberty is popular. And he knows that whether it's through the Mises Institute or going out and just touring the country, he's going to keep bringing people to the message.
Well, and a lot of folks would say right now, as of April 26, 2012, that the presidential nomination for the Republican Party is over. But I think this crowd here proves that there's still enthusiasm for Ron Paul, and it's ironic. It seems like there's very little enthusiasm for any of the so-called establishment candidates. What do you think about that?
I think if your candidate was Rick Perry and then maybe Rick Santorum and Herman Cain and then finally Mitt Romney, you probably need to not participate in voting.
The very people who tell us that we're the isolationists are the ones who are always looking around for another enemy to slay and put on sanctions and start another war. They're the ones who don't want to trade with Cuba. We're the ones that think that it's time to engage in the world and to talk to people and trade with people. So they will try to paint us as uncaring. But let me tell you, people who care will care about liberty. And this will never translate into an absolute majority, but I'm certain that our numbers are growing by leaps and bounds. These prairie fires of freedom are being spread, and there's nothing but good news out there, precariously so, because we don't know exactly. We may have something happen. There may be a false flag incident where some ship goes down and you be used for the excuse to accelerate the next war. And we have to learn to distinguish war propaganda from the truth.
Dr. Paul, today's headline story on Infowars.com is about how the government is planning to secretly evacuate Chicago during the upcoming NATO summit in May. Do you have any comments about that?
I haven't seen that, but I don't know exactly what's behind all that. But those kind of statements concern me.
Could there be potentially another false flag event?
I'm always worried about false flags.
We got to get going, sir. Paul, you're a hero!
And now, before we go to break and come back with an amazingly informative guest dealing with governments drugging the Occupy Wall Street crew and total proof with video, Jose Queiroz from Portugal said politicians and diapers should be changed frequently and all for the same reason. They are filled with Janet Napolitano. I added that part, a little Texas flourish there. No, he just said politicians and diapers should be changed frequently, all for the same reason. Wonder what that is. They're full of Janet Napolitano. I will see you after the break, my compadres. Stay with us. It's Infowars Nightly News. It's up to you whether this transmission gets out to people. They're censoring us all over. I didn't even get into YouTube censorship we're seeing right now. Find out more at Infowars.com. Stay with us.
Have you been to InfoWarsShop.com lately? Express your inner patriot with these brand new InfoWars t-shirts. Say it loud with the InfoWars Bullhorn shirt. Or educate the sheeple with the Bill of Rights shirt. Grope the public's mind with the TSA shirt. And with this shirt, you can let the dark side know of the Rebel Alliance's power. All available at InfoWarsShop.com.
Sick of the globalist eugenicist control freaks adding poison to your water and laughing as you get sick and die? Start purifying your water with ProPure. My friends, I've done a lot of research, and the best gravity filter out there, bar none, is ProPure, and it's available discounted at Infowars.com. Its filters are silver impregnated to prevent bacterial growth. There's no priming required. It's NSF 42 certified. Optional fluoride filters can reduce fluoride up to 95%. Easy to set up and use. Doesn't require electricity. Purify water from lakes, streams, ponds, and wells. This filter system leaves in beneficial minerals, which is key. Save money by not buying bottled water and avoid BPA that leaches from the plastic. ProPure is the best gravity-fed filter out there. It's what my family uses. Infowars.com already has the lowest price on ProPure. But if you add the promo code WATER at checkout, you get an additional 10% off at Infowars.com. You can also call to order 888-253-3139. And And we are back on this very important Thursday, May 3rd, 2012 edition of Infowars Nightly News. Now, we just covered the unprecedented released, leaked, and confirmed Army document about re-education camps, brainwashing, all of it, right out of North Korea. We just covered that. But I saw a report yesterday out of Minnesota, and I went and did some research, and so did my team, and it turns out it's in the news there. And they're reporting with a straight face that the police come and pick up the Occupy Wall Street people and take them and give them marijuana, cocaine, heroin, whatever they want. And I was talking to our guest before he went to this interview, and I said, why do you think they're doing it? And I told him my reason for it, but we're going to ask him, as an investigative journalist, what he thinks is going on, and I'll give you my take on this. But this is not a joke. This is not satire. This really is happening. And here's the headline at Infowars.com, police drugging Occupy protesters. There's no other way to put it. And we've seen cases in New York and Austin, Texas, where I live, where they would release people out of the mental hospital and tell them, you'll be arrested anywhere but Occupy. Or we're releasing you out of the county or city or state jail. You've got to go there or we'll arrest you. In Austin, they arrest the homeless for sleeping, unless it was Occupy. Then they put news cameras down there and say, look, there's homeless people defecating. So it's all part of a psyop. But I'm not joking. We're going to play some video clips here that this investigative journalist shot. Dan Feidt is a web developer, and he's also worked as a professional reporter for the Capitol. But now he does it as a volunteer to cover real social issues, and he joins us. The website is hongpong.com. We'll have that on screen for you. But this is big breaking news. In fact, he's shattering the media control, and now it's coming out outside of Minnesota. The police chief there in the area says he didn't know the state police were coming in and doing this. And in Minnesota, state police, like Texas, means feds. So amazing information, but he's also got some groundbreaking research on the Rex 84 garden plot, cable splicer, political roundup news that integrates in with the incredible information we covered previously. So that's the in-depth summary. Let's go to the investigative journalist, Dan Feidt, to break this down and go to some of these clips. Dan, I was pinching myself watching this video, but sure enough, I could tell it was real. I mean, Academy Award actors couldn't, pose as cops and stoned, Occupy people. But then I went and looked. It's in the Minnesota News, but they're reporting on it like, oh, the police are taking people to warehouses and putting them on drugs. That's no big deal.
Right, and basically what we found was pretty clear evidence, and we interviewed a number of participants who went through the program, in some cases multiple times. The program is called Drug Recognition Experts, and it's been run by the Minnesota State Patrol. And we did clearly document that not only did people say that they were offered free drugs for participating in the program, as well as incentives such as cigarettes, cash, food, etc., all of which is extremely unethical, which is why this program has no institutional review board type of oversight, because it's very unethical to encourage people to take drugs in any setting, especially with police officers and, according to participants, with drugs that they were given. And then, so essentially it turbocharged a situation of chemical intoxication at a site called PV Plaza, which is a 24-hour open public plaza space in downtown Minneapolis. And this program has been going on for multiple years. They did use PV Plaza as a site previously, but what was particularly striking now was how closely it all aligned with Occupy, as well as the statements from multiple people that they were asked questions about. Who do you see the leaders are in Occupy? Can you tell us what you guys are doing? Can you tell us your plans to protest on May Day, et cetera, after intoxicating these people in a controlled setting, according to those participants? So that's pretty serious. And the DRE program, which was basically built up by the International Association of Chiefs of Police, which is actually a pretty dangerous organization. A friend of mine described it as globalist gun grabbers, classically, And so the IACP has rolled this DRE program out across the country. It seems
No, they are. They openly say they want to use foreign troops in America, and they do not believe in the civilian ownership of firearms. This is a extremely anti-freedom organization.
Well, IACP is one of the principal organizations that advanced the whole platform of fusion centers, and now they're trying to expand a new total information awareness type of system, which is called NIEM, or National Information Exchange Model. So one thing perhaps that people that are both part of, the liberty movement type people as well as Occupy people could work on is trying to get their municipalities to pull out of the IACP and, basically isolate the negative influence that this organization has, which is not widely known. But I think that would be one way that we could address the problem of these kind of policies being rolled out.
Well, I agree. I want to get you on the wider radio show because I've been reading your articles. You're extremely informed. I've been nose to the grindstone for 17 years. And I even learned some stuff and went and checked and found out you were telling the truth and it was accurate. And unfortunately, it's hard for me to learn something new about all the things they're doing because I'm so immersed in it. But you can teach an old dog new tricks. Look, let's cut right to the chase before we play some clips, and I want you to elaborate on the wider image here. Minnesota, as you know, during the RNC, almost 4 years ago, they used an Austin Fed front guy. Well, I mean, tell folks about that because so much we see is happening in Minnesota and in and around Minneapolis, St. Paul as an epicenter. And then now I want to get into the motive after that of why are they doing this? Demonize Occupy, make them look like a bunch of drug heads, create databases on people, interrogate folks while they're under the truth serum of drugs. I mean, there's so many things going on here.
Yes, absolutely. I think the best way to describe the overall Midwest pattern is there's something called the Midwest Green Scare, which a really good reporter, Will Potters, covered in detail. Essentially, there are tons of people working for different federal agencies that are supposedly looking for terrorists, but since they really don't have any terrorists, they can collect what are called, in the FBI, statistical accomplishments for hassling people, putting them on watch lists and that kind of thing. I was recently provided with more than 600 pages of documents from 2 FBI investigations, and you can Google that if you look up COINTELPRO Gothic 2. The first story was called COINTELPRO Gothic, and that addresses the operational pattern the FBI has across the Midwest to shadow activists before the Occupy movement started. And more broadly, yes, I think it's pretty clear they're interested in doing a lot of database collection and that kind of thing, and it extends beyond the government as well. There has been a great deal of overt surveillance by shady parties around the Twin Cities in the last couple months, and I think it's it's probably fairly likely that those are people like private security hired by the banks to photograph people and that kind of thing. So it's a high tempo thing, and I would say looking up green is the new Red Scare and checking that out, you can find a lot of information about a number of different levels of this type of program going on that started well before Occupy.
Well, that's what I discovered more than a decade ago. They go around and just get people to talk about violence or try to imply that peaceful groups are bad to get funding, to justify their existence. And even one of the head federal marshals, air marshals, went public a few years ago, the Denver Post, and said, we're ordered to put innocent people on list for what they order, or if a child takes a photograph.
Yes.
I mean, I mean, it's almost like exaggerating foreign military threats to get spending. It's creating a domestic threat.
It is absolutely a domestic version of crying wolf and problem reaction solution type operations. In the last several years, I've run into at least 4 people that turned out to be FBI operatives. And I set up one of the, essentially the original IRC chat channel for Occupy Wall Street when it started, because I've been involved in the live video team since the very first day everything got rolling. And within a couple of weeks, the FBI sent their controlled hacker, Sabu, onto my channel to kind of, lurk as an identity. So the FBI is really all over things, and their operational pattern clearly involves planting informants, such as Brandon Darby was the one who was set up in Texas to create a threat during the RNC, and this case in Cleveland, which was on the exact same operational pattern. So there's really no regulation of what the FBI does in these situations, but whenever they create anything like this, they can accumulate statistical accomplishments, and we can only find out about that through freedom of information requests. And
that's right. They're not infiltrating truly dangerous or bad groups. They're getting the underwear bomber on the plane in Amsterdam so Chertoff can make money on body scanners. They're going out and finding mentally ill prisoners, welfare people, mentally retarded people on record to then pay them, sometimes for years, to get them to just talk about an attack. and then viciously sending them to prison when they really need to be in a hospital. Are you excited about the fact that suddenly it's all over mainstream news that the FBI creates its own terror threats and then stops them?
I mean, this is a subject that I've tried to look at very carefully for many years that happens across the political spectrum. So I'm glad that that's being publicized too. But I would add, in the case of this whole DRE program, the war on drugs has really offended me for a long time. I've tried to get officials at the state, local, county level to talk about the consequences of drug prohibition creating financial corruption in the banking system. Wells Fargo is a very powerful player in this city, and they're well known to launder billions of dollars of drug money. And I can't get any officials on the record to explain, if we have a Federal Reserve Bank in Minneapolis and it conducts wire transfer payments, like, who is responsible for dealing with the financial corruption in those wire transfer payments? The people at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, which is part of the Department of Public Safety, which is involved in this whole scandal, they do not deal with the Federal Reserve. They have no access to those systems.
Let's be clear.
So
they pull teenagers over and take them to jail for one joint. Right. Meanwhile, Bloomberg reported Wells Fargo and its subsidiary Wachovia in 2 years laundered $376 billion. And then you've got the state police trying to get kids and people on drugs and offering them heroin, cocaine. You could have a heart attack on that stuff. But that's okay. And you're like, hey, these guys deal drugs. And they're like, we don't know what you're talking about. It's so obvious. They make drugs illegal to keep the price up. But let's stop there. Let me ask you the big question before we go to video clips. Why do you think they have a nationwide program that almost no one knows of? I mean, I know statistics show the DARE program actually gets children interested in drugs, so that they're advertising it to them. I mean, and most of the cops are, too ignorant to even understand that, but we understand it, and our viewers understand it. Some of the public doesn't understand it, but expanding on this complex issue, point blank range, covering this, breaking it, why do you think, not the reason the cops think, but why are the social engineers, the International Association of Chiefs of Police and all these groups, why are they trying to get people on heroin and cocaine and marijuana?
I mean, simply put, chemical dependency is one of the most effective means to control people. And so the DRE program clearly seems to be intended to introduce officers to the idea of controlling people through chemical dependency, saying, I will give you a little bit of what you need in order to get information from you, and acclimating that to that type of process.
There you go, turning the cops into drug pushers. This is how you introduce them.
Yeah, but also too, I think part of the reason the video has resonated is because it's a condensation of everything that's disturbing and horrible about the war on drugs from the police. They didn't want to be videotaped because they know they feel guilty about it, and they know that it's irresponsible. And
well, that's like the troops saying we got to grow opium because we're against drugs, and we load it on the planes, but we put you in jail when you use it. It's all just out in the open now.
Yes, it is. And so what I'm personally happy that, like, this appears to have been, an egregious enough violation to catch on tape and put the case together. And other people in other states, I really want to encourage other people to start investigating programs in their own areas. But I'm encouraged because I was really hoping that the Occupy movement could really get at the war on drugs, because before the war on terror, the war on drugs was used as one of the main, levers to advance the surveillance state, to implement the tracking systems of the military-industrial complex into local communities, using federal grant programs with freshly printed debt dollars to send out military hardware into different cities. So the war on drugs has always been used to kind of advance this agenda, and we saw in South America, for example, the regional alliances that they've used to keep the war on drugs rolling are finally disintegrating. So can people like the Occupy movement, Liberty movement, Truthers, We Are Change, can people expose the different corruption going on? Can we force the different layers of government to account for all the financial corruption and finally quit abusing people? It's the sense of abuse. It's the sense of treating people like
it's the oldest trick
like
in the book. Listen, it's re-legalizing slavery. You can't just grab somebody because they're black and throw them on a ship because, you misinterpret the Bible and say they're the devil and deserve it. Now you just put out a substance you know is addictive, you bring it in, you keep it illegal to jack up the price, and when they use it, you throw them in your prison for 25 cents an hour, putting everybody else out of business and driving down the wages. We were just showing while you were talking video of you there talking to the police. I want to go to this first clip where they take a young man away. He comes back obviously very inebriated. But from your research, and I looked this up, they admittedly give them cocaine, heroin, LSD. We have no idea the provenance of these drugs or where they got them. Is this some crap they got in the locker?
Well, right.
Marijuana, all of this. I thought this is so deadly that we've all got to have the government, you know, basically taking our freedoms away. But what are they doing? Again, preying on Occupy Wall Street like a shuttle bus, drugging everybody up.
Yeah. Well, it simply put, there's a, you know, because of the abusive nature of the war on drugs type bureaucracies, there are a number of different options that police departments have had across the country since Occupy started to try to create problems for the movement. So here last fall in Minneapolis, they would definitely drop off people that were very intoxicated at the Occupy site. And it was pretty well known in New York that the NYPD was dropping off intoxicated people, telling them to concentrate essentially in the Occupy space while they were intoxicated in one way or another, or people that were known.
And by the way, that's not your opinion. I mean, in Austin, they admitted they were dumping upwards of 50 drunks a day, saying, we won't take you to jail, come here. They were dumping the mentally ill, everybody, and then saying, look at it, they're having fights.
Well, right, exactly, and so so there were fights in the last couple of weeks, and there was you know, an allegation of a sexual assault, and so the question is, was the person who committed that sexual assault, had they just been through that program a couple hours earlier? Because that would mean that all of these law enforcement parties are directly liable for that sexual assault, and I think you can see how when this program is running, it really shifts the atmosphere in the whole space. It becomes a total distortion. That's why it's MK Occupy Minnesota. It's what happens when a government program with no oversight is rolled out. And I think that the reason that it has this nature that comes across in the video is simply because the war on drugs is so intrinsically abusive. It trains police to treat people like objects, and not
and by the way,
treatment, treat with them like human beings. You know.
I agree, but look, I've studied, and I know you have, MK Ultra, MK Naomi, mind control. In the late 50s, early 60s, the CIA throwing suitcases of LSD into the University of Texas down the road, and Harvard, and Theodore Kaczynski was part of that program, and mind control programs, and government releasing the recipe for crack cocaine. That's all declassified. I mean, here they are. And these cops are compartmentalized. They're just like, we're doing a training program to see what drugs look like. Oh, give me a break. They're being taught to be drug pushers. This is outrageous.
Well, and here's, if I can back it up for a second, I think the idea people should try to understand, regardless of their standpoint, is that we are all enmeshed in a web of power at different levels, in different ways, and different assumptions we make, and who we're linked to and everything. But when people get flipped or taken over by the system, when they're turned into informants or peons or whatever you want to call it, it's happening because they're in a weak point in that web of power. And so here in the video, we can see people that are like far enough down that the law enforcement's being trained to get at them and then flip them over. And you know, that's essentially, generally speaking, I think the pattern that we should all try to look for.
No,
you know,
no. I think that's the answer. Look for people they can provocateur and set up, generally assess them, create files on everyone, but find out who can be informants and provocateurs, because now the cops are giving you cash, money, cigarettes, and cocaine.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, it's been a rough ride with the Occupy movement. It's had its ups and downs, and I've been involved since the first day. But for at least one thing is that it's really flushed a lot of abusive and shocking practices into the open. Like people, if we just were simply telling people about this program, they probably wouldn't believe us. But because we were able to document it, which anybody can do if they work together in a team, you can make it happen. I just want to add, too, that I did not shoot most of the video. I essentially acted as kind of a coordinator, producer, interviewer. I shot some video, but this was a large project with people from 4 different organizations: Communities United Against Police Brutality, Occupy Minneapolis, Twin Cities Indie Media, and Rogue Media. So it was a real good collaborative project effort, but I think that if we can encourage people to do similar efforts, we can expose
absolutely, and regardless of people's political persuasion, basic liberty and freedom and the Bill of Rights, Constitution, due process, human rights is the tie that binds us all together. I want to go to this. I want to go to this first clip. Let's go to that now.
Yeah, man, I'm so high right now.
Yeah, so like tell us the story. Like, so what happened? Like you guys, like the last thing we saw was you gave us a thumbs up.
They didn't give us a test. They didn't test us this time. They just smoked us up this time.
Where did they take you? What happened?
They took us to the same place in Richfield.
Whoa. Right by the airport?
Yeah, right near the airport, yup. And they were gonna do the test, but you know, like, because of you guys, we couldn't do the test because you guys were giving them trouble and shit. But they still smoked us up, though. And then they gave me a bowl, too, and we smoked on them forever.
Wow.
For like a whole hour.
Was it
straight?
Was
they
it
gave us a whole bag of weed, and then we smoked it all up.
Like the entire, like,
yeah.
Holy shit.
Half, you got half.
Dan Feidt, amazing video. Tell us what we just witnessed.
Well, essentially, an individual who has been, you know, around kind of the Occupy movement, the general scene. He goes by Forrest. He said that he went through the program multiple times, at least 3 times, and he was basically offered free marijuana by the officers. And the last time that he went through it, the officers were convinced that he was trying to basically expose the program, so they wouldn't let him into the testing facility again, but they did, he said, smoke him out for an entire hour. And then when he came back to the Occupy site, like, he was incredibly, you know, high and acting, you know, a little crazy, climbing up on signs and laughing about things and stuff. And so that shows, I mean, pretty clearly, and I do commend him for being willing to go forth and discuss this and be open about his identity. He went and told the city council in Minneapolis yesterday in person about what had happened as well. So it's imperative that we find people that are willing to step forward and show how this works. But essentially, Forrest says he, you know, that he was intoxicated when the police gave him drugs, and he was sober when he left. And when he came back, he was very, very messed up. And that's incredibly unethical, if not illegal.
And we're going to play, oh, it's totally illegal. We're going to play a clip of that right now. But when we come back, I want to ask you the question. Well, I'll ask that question when we come back. Here's that clip at the city council.
My name is Forrest. I'm here with Occupy. I'm not going to tell you my address, but I live near Powderhorn Park. I'm here to speak about, because everybody's been talking about it, the police and the sheriff. Yeah, I'm one of the persons who got taken away. They gave me a full bag of weed, and they gave me a pipe to smoke it out of, and they just took us out to, I forgot the name of the airfield, but it's somewhere in Richfield, out near this bus line, 66 and Cedar, and they let us smoke it on those sand hills where the dirt pits were, and I've done it 3 times with them, over 3 times with them, throughout this week and last week. And basically, I asked them, like, why they're doing this, and they say it's because we're trying to test people to see if we can catch people under the influence, you know, for signs, dilated pupils, all that, and smell. They gave me a urine test, but when I asked them, like, is this going to be on record or anything? No, they said nothing about that, and they gave me a fake name and everything, so I don't know what's up with that. And also, the second time I went, yeah, I asked some friends to come along, and the second time, there was actually, like, media and press. I think it was Sam, the shorter Sam, was there filming it, and Ben was there, and Dan was there. He got really angry when they took me away from the Occupy movement, and they were kind of getting into an argument, conversation with them, because he wanted to know why the police were doing this and why this was going on. And, yeah, I thank you for that, man, standing up for me, man, and all the people for Occupy about the police. And yeah, I'm one of the only ones, but I have a lot more friends who have done this, who can speak even more about this. So, what's going on?
My issue is I drive up to checkpoints, or I've had cops pull me over and say, "Are you on drugs?" And I'm like, look, I don't use drugs. You know, I don't use prescription, over the counter, any of it. I may drink a beer or drink some coffee. No, you're not going to search my car, get a warrant. But my issue is next time cops pull me over, I'm going to say, hey, what have I got drugs? Take me to your compound. Give me a bunch of drugs. You know, I mean, how do they selectively take some poor teenager to jail, like so many friends I had in high school, and then ruin their lives and put them in juvenile where they get raped or whatever, you know, for a nonviolent crime, because drugs are so bad. But then meanwhile, they're taking people and offering them whatever drug they want. I mean, this is crazy.
Yes, and I would stress, like, we weren't able to collect, direct video evidence of that happening. But we have testimonials from multiple people that all line up along those lines.
But we know the program's real. I mean, they admit they have the program.
Yeah, and it speaks to, the inherent corruption and dehumanizing nature of the war on drugs as a system, which has to be shut down. It's unbelievably cruel and unethical, not to mention an enormous waste of taxpayer money. There are multiple layers to this story, apart from the fact that it works out being a huge political interference drug thing against Occupy, but also that it's an expression of how incredibly dehumanizing the whole thing is across our society.
Now, we've got another clip. We showed the video earlier, but here's the audio where you confronted the sheriff. Tell us when this happened.
Yes, that was on Saturday afternoon. That sheriff arrived. We kind of show him getting out with the state patrol. He was from Olmsted County, which is an outstate county, and I was able to basically get him to talk about who the director of the program was and the fact that there was no institutional review to protect the interests and safety of these test subjects.
So he's out of his jurisdiction from another county taking people to use drugs.
Yeah. He's it's across it's a whole program that runs across the state. So
it's another way to merge and get rid of jurisdictions. Incredible. Here's that clip.
Do you have adequate medical personnel at any of the facilities where this is being done?
Everything that we do is completely validated. Okay?
It's being run by the State Patrol?
Yep.
Okay,
Department of Public
who's the
Safety.
Officer? Okay, Department of Public Safety. Who's the officer in charge?
Why do I have to tell you that? Who are you?
Because you're spending our tax dollars.
Who are you?
Who are you?
Well, he's a citizen. Right?
N. Jacobson from the Olmsted
Right,
County.
I know. Yeah.
Sir N. Jacobson from the Olmsted County Sheriff's Department.
I've talked with Adam before.
We need to know who's running this program and whether or not adequate medical or ethical safeguards have been put in. So it's the State Patrol, but you can't tell me the name of the officer running the program?
The coordinator for the state. His name is Rick Munoz. He's a sergeant with the State Patrol.
Okay.
It's called the DRE program.
DRE?
You can look it up. Drug Recognition Evaluator.
Okay.
Yep, you can look it up on the internet. It's actually a national program.
Okay.
That we do. Yep.
And there actually are medical personnel available when this is going on?
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Where do those medical personnel work?
Where do they work?
Yeah, where are they with?
Well, we're stationed out of Richfield, so it'd be the nearest ambulance service.
Richfield?
Yep.
Okay.
So next to the airport.
Okay.
West side of the airport.
What's the facility where this is being done at the airport?
It's the Department of Transportation. Why? We just look for a garage. It's just a big garage is all it is.
Okay.
It's where we can just do the testing's simple.
Before we go to this next clip of another person who leaves sober, comes back out of their mind, stoned on something, tell us about any other comments you've got on the sheriff discussion.
Well, I also asked that sheriff, I said, well, who is responsible for the impact of financial corruption from the war on drugs prohibition? And I said, that essentially there's issues with drug money being laundered through the banking system. And he said that that was above his pay grade and that he didn't know who to talk to about that. So I haven't been able to find anybody in the Minnesota state government who will go on the record about the issue of financial corruption. This is another example of that. The only politician who's ever given me a substantial on-the-record explanation of laundered drug money in the banking system is, of course, Ron Paul.
That's right, and he won the first few states, but they stole it from him, and now they admit they stole it, but that's the way it is. Mitt Romney, another big banker, he'll save us.
Yes, but, I got to hand it to the Ron Paul organizers in Minnesota. They've done a really, really good job rounding up delegates, and they're bringing Santorum people into their camp. So there's still some kind of game afoot. It's been interesting to watch, and hopefully that will help.
Oh, I agree. They're planning on creating a big fracas and just pointing out what a fraud it all is at the convention. And I think it's a great strategy. Even though they've cheated Paul up front, he would be the nominee. He won the first few states, but they just stole it because they're narcotics trafficking banking dictatorship. I mean, what do you...
I think there's a new electronic voting system company from, Spain that's going to be in this election. So hopefully...
Yeah, they're going to count most of the votes nationwide.
Yeah. But I also wanted to touch really quickly on the upcoming NATO summit, if we have time for that right now.
I want to get to that, and I want to give you the floor for about 10 minutes because I just wanted to go through all these points when we come back from this last clip of another young man who leaves sober, comes back out of his mind. Here's that clip.
They asked me how much I had to smoke.
Well, how are you?
I didn't answer anything. And then they asked me if I wanted to smoke more. It just stopped me on my tracks. Like, yes.
And then what?
And then I smoked with a cop.
How did they go about asking you to come with them?
They were like, "Did you come with us? We're doing a research on people who are under the influence of marijuana."
And this was Hennepin County?
This is
sheriffs or cops?
Sheriffs from a different county.
Sheriffs from a different county brought you to the first precinct of Minneapolis, Hennepin County. And you smoked weed inside a Hennepin County precinct. And so when they were bringing you there, did they handcuff you? Did they tell you anything? Did they give you any rights or anything? Did they take your name?
Well, no, they didn't take my name. They didn't ask for anything.
They didn't ask for anything? No. They just wanted to see. What did they say they wanted to get from you? What kind of information?
Like how people act under the influence of street drugs. In this case, marijuana.
So they knew that you had already smoked, and yet they provided more weed for you to smoke.
Oh yeah.
Was it high grade weed?
Dude, this is some of the best shit I've had in my life. Like now I know what happens with stuff they confiscate.
Said, would you like to partake in this research that we're doing? It's like, not really. But is there compensation for it? He said, yeah, we'll give you more. We'll give you more marijuana. We'll buy you a pack of cigarettes and take you out to lunch. They said, we know who you are. We know that you're Panda and that you're deep into the Occupy movement. And I was like, dang, am I that infamous in the system? They would give me a quarter more of marijuana, and if I said I would become an informant. Me being the devious bastard that I am, I said, sure. And I reneged as soon as I got out of the cop car on Nicollet and 9th. They didn't really mention too much of what they wanted to know. They said that they would contact me when the time's right.
Just another example of somebody leaving sober, bombed out of their mind. This just goes on all day. Any other points on that? And then let's get into the NATO summit, what's happening with that, the G20, and then your research into the FEMA camp situation, which is now admitted.
Yes. Well, I would just, simply wrap this up by saying the DRE program was supposed to resume today at 3 o'clock. And so we'll see if there are still personnel trying to run this program. We will see if there are vehicles down at the Minnesota Department of Transportation facility, which is at 66th and Cedar Avenue on the east side of the Minneapolis airport, west side of the airport. And so we'll see if they keep running this program. We had to put this video out quickly because this was really, really unsafe for everyone. And so I'm really hoping that the program has been stopped.
One more point I forgot to add. In the video, he talks about they tried to get him to become an informant.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. He said that they basically gave him a quarter ounce of marijuana in exchange for promising to give them information later. And then the other guy, the guy with the big hair, Forrest, he also started questioning, and he was so intoxicated that he started talking. And so we can clearly see that this is being used to train them to, convert people into informants. Like if it's a training program, that's what they're training.
No, that's how the cops turn your kids against you. This is what some of the Soviets did, is give them drugs. And so now the cops are the drug pushers. I guess they've always been the drug pushers. Look at Serpico.
Right. They're keeping the market alive, right? Making sure the profit margins flow to the financial industry, also known as Wall Street.
That's what I try to tell people. I mean, folks, do not use Big Pharma. They make money, these illegal drugs. It's just, come on, you don't need it. You fall into their trap. But the problem is now they're making whole milk evil so they can raid us. This whole war on drugs, as you said, is proliferating into every level. The surveillance society, the surveillance of banking, the harassment. I mean, every once in a while I get allergies and I go to get some Sudafed and they get my license and scan it and it's such a joke.
Yes. And the sad thing at the public policy level, which I've covered at the state legislature for a long time, legislators who are working on expanding the war on drugs are very deceptive about the fiscal impact of those expenditures, which are obviously a really bad use of taxpayer money that we can't afford right now.
The prisons are bankrupting us. The prisons are bankrupting us.
Yes, but they lie about the fact that these programs will cost money. They lie about the fact making them open-ended will cost money. They basically, it's just disgusting the amount of essentially authoritarian patronage networks which you can expand and finance through this process.
It brings black ops to America. It brings corruption of police. They made so much money off 9 years of prohibition. As soon as the alcohol prohibition was over, they made a bunch of drugs you could buy at the drugstore illegal. And drug use went way up. You can corrupt the police, corrupt the population. You can cut it down. You can create all these rivers of black market money. It's amazing. Look at how the war on drugs has wrecked Latin America. And just for survival, even their corrupt elites are saying legalize it now. And I want your comment on that because you alluded to it. This drug-dealing banking cartel is in crisis. The jig is up. I'm even hearing when Pat Robertson says decriminalize marijuana, you know they're in trouble.
Right. And, you know, the thing is that things that can't go on forever don't. And so at certain points, such as with this video, we're going to finally start laying out the chunks of that basically bring down the fact that it's a system of fakeness. It's a system of fraudulent representations, which let them kind of, you know, keep committing acts like, you know, shaking people down, going to court, etc. And eventually that system of fakeness will start failing if we just keep working at it. But it will take a lot of work to make that happen and to just prove to everybody the whole thing is one huge fake scam and that we can't keep doing it anymore. And everyone's records should be expunged. The whole thing should be deleted from everyone's criminal records.
Dan Feidt, you're certainly fighting tyranny. I'm impressed. You got 10 minutes. The floor is yours. I'm turning it over to you to get into the FEMA camps, your other research, other things you're working on, websites, other groups. It's good to know people out there understand what's happening. Break it down.
Yes, thank you. One thing I just want to mention is that obviously the NATO summit is coming up in Chicago right now, and that is a national special security event. And so what that means is a whole different kind of set of circumstances come into play. I did just write a story a couple of weeks ago about a new department inside Homeland Security called Homeland Security Investigations. And these guys are getting involved in everything from national special security events to copyright enforcement to hackers to, you know, you name it. They even have like literally black helicopters landing at the Super Bowl so like, you know, SWAT teams can defend the 35-yard line. I'm not even kidding. So this agency creates backup agents for national special security events, and they also have these giant crazy trucks. This agency, HSI, is currently inside Immigrations and Customs Enforcement. I think everybody should look at it really carefully. It's very interesting. Now, the other thing too is that because in 2008 the Republican National Convention came to Minneapolis, and I was really shocked to see you know, essentially special deployments of the Minnesota National Guard. And I wanted to know what is the bureaucratic procedure behind all of that? How is that run through their Joint Command Center and so forth? And so I've been looking very carefully for details about that. And so in 2010, I found a file, a PowerPoint presentation on a U.S. Army Corps of Engineer web server for something called National Level Exercise 2011, New Madrid Seismic Zone sort of earthquake test. And so in the presentation, they had accidentally left notes inside the presentation file about a different plan, which is called U.S. Northcom Con Plan 3502. A con plan is a concept of operations plan. It's essentially a planning template. It's so when they pull a plan off the shelf and then they set it up in a place, they use a con plan to set it up. And so Con Plan 3502, which is called Civil Disturbance Operations, I found documentation that is the replacement plan for the Garden Plot, which is the plan that the Pentagon used to deploy troops inside the United States. And so I found evidence that, or citations that Con Plan 3502 includes domestically operated detention facilities by the military. It includes riot control gear, and it includes warrantless search and seizure. So at places like the RNC, the 2009 G20 in Pittsburgh, which I was also at, and then as well as this upcoming NATO summit, I think we can safely say that Con Plan 3502 is an important underlying planning document for the deployment of troops in the United States. They
use these national security events as beta test, not just here, but worldwide. They're duplicating. I noticed at G20 where Dew got arrested 2 years ago, they were snatching and grabbing people, and we learned it was private security, was in command of the military, the police, everything.
Well, it's all heavily coordinated, across these different categories. Like domestic military isn't supposed to be doing this. They aren't supposed to be guarding the jail, which they were. The National Guard was. And so they, at the one level, they use something called Con Plan 3501, Defense Support of Civil Authorities. And that's the plan that's activated if they use helicopters during a flood or whatever. So that's the sort of benign plan. And then that's available publicly. It's called DSCA. And I think I saw a reference sort of in a way to the story that you guys just posted about this new camp thing. So DSCA is the benign one, and then Con Plan 3502 is the new, essentially the new guarded plot, the new stuff, the hardcore thing, the locking up. It is classified secret. And so I would, obviously urge anybody that has information about this to step forward, because this is very important to our freedoms. And I think it's a very concrete example of the kind of thing that people need to look into. But if we can find those details and lay them out, then I think everybody's operating from a position of better information.
Well, I noticed that when we posted our article today, leaked U.S. Army document outlines plan for re-education camps in America, we've got hundreds of others. There's been congressional hearings, and I had weird PSYOP folks calling him going, "It's not true, Alex. Stop lying, Alex." And it was like, wow, you could hear the tactics. They are really scared of us learning about this. And the thing is, then they say, well, it's been on the books a long time. I'm seeing a giant ratcheting up. Are you seeing that?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. But again, it's like, before Occupy started, I was really concerned that this whole system was going to easily roll out with any real, layers of resistance to it. And what I was encouraged by is seeing that essentially this, bankers building the police state agenda through organizations like IACP, that Occupy at least was something out there as a countervailing force to, raise awareness of that. So I have some hopes that I didn't have before, that maybe we won't have this ugly outcome. And I think
I agree with you. I talked to the military and police. They're finally getting it because people pre-warned them. They understand this. But like, take Occupy. People know that there's problems with Wall Street, crony capitalism, insider monopoly stuff. And so the media announces off of real activists, oh, there's this thing, go be part of it. Then they try to use the big crowds that are diverse to project, give George Soros more of your tax money, not to help the country or pay off debts, but to give them more austerity money. Then when that didn't work, Obama starts demonizing it when he did say it was great, and they have coordinated raids by Homeland Security shutting it down in what was it, 30-something cities. So there you see it all in action, where the system has all the money and power at one level, but more and more, because people are aware of it, everything they do is falling on its face. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. I think that people don't like seeing their taxpayer dollars wasted for bullying people around. Everybody understands that we can't afford to spend money on this type of nonsense anymore. And everyone is really starting to understand and have the discussion about how financial corruption has damaged everybody's standard of living, and how financial corruption has taken over control of the political system through, what's called regulatory capture by Bill Black. And so I think that, step by step, we're getting this exposed. And so if people are going out to things like this NATO summit, I would say it's always a good idea to try to live stream video. This will be the first major summit where people will be able to have really wide access to live video, hopefully, assuming they don't shut down all the cell phone towers. And we know all the information that's been coming out about cell phone surveillance recently from the ACLU as well. But nonetheless, we will get more footage than ever before of how the federal government is building up police state structures and building up these large bureaucracies like HSI, and running them through things like NSSEs to acclimate everybody, get everybody ready, so to get all the wheels rolling, implementing things like Con Plan 3502 and other corruptions of what we thought we traditionally understood as the constitutional order in America, which involved not living under martial law and total tyranny.
Well, I'm impressed with your analysis and understanding of this subject. What do you say to people who just hear my show or read your blog? And I want you to plug all those here on air for us. We've had them under you, but it's important people visit those because your information is very accurate. What do you say to those that just kind of halfway pay attention, who don't know that it was in newspapers that Gulf of Tonkin was staged in '64? They just thought it was a rumor until it was declassified. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the same way with these camps and these plans that I see being basically taken out of deep freeze and being, warmed up. I mean, folks need to understand this is real. What do you say to those who won't take the time out, who are watching this video, to go actually research it and find out we're not just saying this?
Right. Well, obviously, for one thing, it's always hard to know where to start. And that's why it's so important that we do everything we can to try to document everything. If we hadn't documented this, like, people wouldn't just sort of believe it out of hand. And I think that helps a lot. I think, you know, all that we can do is say, listen, you know, as activist media, we come at this from our own perspectives, which may not agree with you, but listen, you guys can keep looking, you know, further into this, and I think that, you know, platforms like Infowars have done a good job of saying, listen, you know, you got to get rolling and do your own research. But a lot of times it takes a personal experience, something strange happening, just being treated corruptly in a very routine way at the county level, for example. That's the kind of thing that radicalizes people to the idea that the government can be very shady and corrupt and dangerous. So, you know, I think that we've just seen like a lot of shared experiences happen. People that had these Occupy crackdowns happen, that was an experience very similar to the RNC and G20 type crackdowns that they've done before. So everybody got to experience the extent to which the system would coordinate and try to shut them down. Also, I would add quickly, too, that the IACP, I know, had published some kind of internal document about Occupy and you know, essentially to encourage police officers to, you know, get this thing shut down. So the IACP in the repression of Occupy is probably a subject that needs to be plumbed a lot further. So I just say, you know, laying stuff out there, a lot of times it takes bite-sized pieces. Sometimes it takes short videos, but also sometimes I think longer videos, such as this one, can really lay out a complete picture of the feeling. So people don't just feel like it's a little quick snap.
No, I understand. It personalizes, it illustrates the ridiculous, cartoonish level of hypocrisy. But yeah. I think you hit the heart of it. What is some international private group of police chiefs doing telling our local police what to do? What is the CIA doing, and it's illegal, as everybody knows, to be setting up threat fusion centers that they're in control of? All of this is a joke. So just like we had 800 cities and 5 states say no to the Patriot Act, they said, oh, that's symbolic. No, it's more than that. We've had 2 states pass laws against the NDAA. All of this is happening. We go in and say, no, this is illegal. This is a 10th Amendment violation. As Ron Paul's pointed out, you can't be doing this. Stop coming in here and taking over our police department. We live here in Minnesota. Yes. We live in Texas. We live in New York. We live in Maine. We live in Florida. Get out. I mean, people get that. Get out.
Yeah, absolutely. And fortunately, here in Minnesota, we still have the Minnesota Data Practices Act. So I'm hoping that we can, you know, get all the emails behind this program. I think that would be really helpful. So people have to keep making document requests every way you can. You'll find a lot of details that you didn't expect. A lot of weird little coordination groups up to different things.
No, exactly. They're lazy. If you hit 5 different groups, they'll deny you in 3, but be too lazy to catch the other 2.
Yeah, exactly, actually, yes. Sending out data requests to obscure places that aren't expecting them is one of the best approaches to getting at deeply buried stories. So that would be definitely one suggested approach I would recommend for everybody. You know, get that video camera out there, get those data requests out there, start pulling that stuff together. And then if you can, you know, make that impactful case and put them really on the spot, like that's what you have to do to really affect the flow of decision making, which happens in these authoritarian bureaucracies that we're all so concerned about, you know, rightfully so.
Wow. Well, I'm excited about the work you guys are doing, all the groups there. And I mean, I've seen a lot of activism out of Minnesota since 4 years ago. I mean, I saw it before, but since everybody saw the Fed command and demand and set up those innocent activists and send them to prison with the Molotov cocktails, I think that's really gotten people energized. I'm watching that from afar, but am I right?
Right. Well, and I think, yeah, I mean, Minneapolis has really bore the brunt of a lot of FBI COINTELPRO operations, especially in the kind of anarchist and socialist scene going on. But people have learned from experience. People have learned about grand jury resistance. People have learned about the operational patterns of informants. People have learned to look out for their friends and have a good sense of how people operate. And I think that those experiences actually contributed to a base which helped make the Occupy movement achieve more tangible traction and more tangible benefits, and not simply just get played by the usual bag of tricks, generally speaking. And I think that that's been effective. But I would say that a lot of us here feel like we've, you know, been around the block with freaky government suppression, and we're not backing down anytime soon, and we're going to get the word out so people actually understand. Have you found that the more you resist, the stronger you get? I mean, resistance is victory. Yeah, I think so. I think once you get momentum really rolling, then you can really start making things happen. People see that. It gets new people motivated, because what we're really I would say broadly that the Occupy movement is about getting people to snap out of passivity, out of being passive spectators, and getting them to do their own stuff and have agency in their own lives, but also not like, you know, take orders from cadres of establishment people from whatever form of the establishment that's out there, but getting people to have agency in their own lives and showing them that they can do that, that they can, you know, take action themselves and not just sort of fob off responsibility through representatives and bureaucracies and stuff like that. So I think that that's been successful, and I think that applies to everybody, regardless of
exactly. Instead of just begging some bureaucrat, you can show where they violated the laws and things and show them who's boss. I mean, the power of activism. So many people just sit back and never get involved. But once you get involved, there's no going back to that sanitized world that's destroying our society.
Yes. Right, and but also too, you know, it's important when we challenge very difficult things, when we have, you know, a whole line of, you know, turtled up riot police, when we're dealing with, you know, documents that talk about rounding people up and taking all their rights away and stuff. We have to remember is that we also never want to be conveyors for the sense of fear, and that's why I've always tried to use humor as a way to kind of like cut these daunting opponents down to size, because it's all a farce. It's a put on. It's a show. They're big puffy guys, big like fake front and all that stuff. So I mean, the issues are serious in all this repression, but if we use humor, we can defang.
Well, I agree with you, but what you said is absolutely central at the base of this. I miscalculate and think that the general public, on average, is my mindset. If somebody tells me there's a great dark threat coming, I immediately want to get motivated to fight it. But I realize that when I sit here and state how serious this is, a lot of people get scared, but they've got to understand the system has amassed all this blustering power because they are weak, and you don't realize how strong you are until you engage it. The fear is if we do cower and give in to them, then they win. And that's why they're amassing bigger and bigger giant tanks. I mean, they might come up with something, you know, the size of the Empire State Building to roll down the street to scare us. But it is because...
That's what they had in Oakland like a couple of days ago, that monster tank that the Oakland Police Department rolled out against May Day.
Yeah, so, but I mean, again, it shows how truly weak they are, and the system better hope. All these little front minions better hope it doesn't go to something physical, because then it's not going to be people facing their black tank out in the street. It's going to be something entirely different. And again, these cops, military, they're just people that are part of the system as well. We've all been under this. We need to reach out to them now, not just sit there and talk about some physical confrontation.
Right, and that's why I said, you know, we're all in the web of power somewhere, you know, and so we can start pulling on those strings to kind of get those people unraveled out of those authoritarian sort of blocks and networks and say, listen, like, you need to wake up. Like, your kids are going to live basically in a police state controlled by the banks where we're all debt slaves unless you start working on this issue, because it's really, really getting bad. And it's, you know, it hasn't been getting better anytime lately, except like through openings like the Occupy movement, through other openings. We've been raising these issues, but the trajectory has been really bad. So, but we can all intervene, and we can prod at those people in the system and start showing them different things that erode their loyalty to the authoritarian trend.
Well, I think we've had an amazing banter here, Dan Feidt, and I hope you'll come back as a correspondent from Minnesota for us on a routine basis. Thank you so much. 2-minute closing points if you haven't you made some points you wanted to cover.
Yeah, again, I will just simply call upon everybody out there that you guys can do this stuff. We don't have like some magic like toolkit. We basically use live video, you know, little cell phone videos, that kind of thing. It's like you got to get out there in the community, have a good sense of who's around, who gets word of bad plans coming down the pike. But everybody can do this. There's a huge opportunity right now to, in particular, go after the war on drugs, which is a major wing of the total authoritarian trajectory. And I personally am really hoping that the war on drugs can be challenged to the core and then finally shut down, and we can end the prison industrial complex and this abusive, you know, system of statism and exploitation and dehumanization that we've documented here. It's repellent, and people sense that, and they're reacting appropriately. But anybody can make this happen, so get out there and do it. That's my suggestion.
I agree with you. It's not just a wing. The drug war is at the very heart of everything. We've got to end it. And people say, oh, you want people on drugs. As you know, countries that have decriminalized, drug use goes down generally by about half. It takes all the money out of it. And there's not these crack zombies running around robbing people to get money to go buy crack that goes to a big bank. And every time you ask the cops, hey, that bank's laundering the money, they laugh at you. That's above my pay grade. But I think about my children who will be teenagers soon, and they're going to be out there in the middle of this, and if they're dumb enough to, you know, use drugs or something, they're going to have the cops preying on them. And again, do the cops want their kids preyed on? I mean, this is just so, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, and also, too, the other thing about it is that the war on drugs and the battle to repress the Occupy movement is really a battle over public space, because Occupy says all of us should have agency to make change and influence our lives, but the system wants us to be passive spectators. And so in Minneapolis, they're trying to rail through an incredibly expensive new NFL stadium, which will put us all in debt slavery to bond payments and that
corporate
type of thing.
Welfare, again.
Passive, and being a passive spectator and not being engaged in our own lives. And so what things like Occupy can do, what things like getting out there and shooting videos yourselves can do, is reverse that authoritarian spectacle, which is one of the main features of fascist and authoritarian political regimes. Reversing the spectacle is always a great idea.
So get off the bench, get in the game. Resistance is victory. Dan Feidt, great job. Thank you so much for your amazing report.
Thank you, Alex. It's great to talk with you about this important issues.
Very exciting. Well, that was an amazing interview. I hope that all of you out there get this information out to your friends and family pronto. It's up to you to spread this video out to everyone you know. Only you can resist the globalist. Because, you know, he's talking about big banks taking over and debt slaves. They're not just people that want you to be debt slaves. They're eugenicists. They are anti-human globalists who absolutely want you dead. They use poverty as a tool of control. All right, amazing transmission. Great job to the crew. Don't forget, if you believe in this information, want to help spread alternative research, become a subscriber. We got a 15-day free trial running at prisonplanet.tv. Until tomorrow, I'm Alex Jones signing off. The rest is in your court.